What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my Week 7 Top 25 video. I coming into this week after the amount of chaos that we just saw, I really had no idea how my top 25 was going to look. So I have compiled to what I believe up to this point are the best top 25 teams. I think the AP poll has pretty similar teams in its poll. It's this is just really hard to put together a top 25 poll right now. There are a lot of teams within my top 15. I don't really feel good about being in the top 15. A lot of teams in the top 10 that I don't really feel good about being in the top 10, and I'll explain my way as I get there. But I mean, this week, trying to make a top 25 poll is one of the biggest crapshoots that we've had in college football over the past recent memory. So I'm going to try my best, whether you agree or disagree. Here's my top 25 for this upcoming week. Hey, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch this video, and please help support me in any way that you can, whether that's liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, or continuing to watch my videos here, including ringing the bell. Or if you want to go support me on Twitter or X somewhere outside of YouTube, go give me a follow at TailgateNate29. I post a lot, basically about all the other content I create as a sports media student. But without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and dive right on in here to my top 25. And well, the top 25 list wouldn't be complete without some honorable mentions. So here are the teams that just barely missed out on my top 25 poll. Obviously, USC and Michigan, they had losses this past week, so they dropped out. Washington beat Michigan, so they just missed out. Another Big Ten team in Iowa, really close to getting into the top 25. That loss to Ohio State definitely doesn't help, makes their job a little bit harder. But Iowa definitely a team that can still break on in to the top 25. I've kept UNLV on this list, and you could even throw Liberty on this list as well, but I felt like keeping UNLV, again, a loss at home to a good Syracuse team that is back on my honorable mention list after they were in my top 25 earlier this season. Yeah, definitely a couple teams to watch out for there. Arkansas out of the SEC, they're here, and you can even put Kentucky, maybe even a team like Vanderbilt on this list as well. Texas Tech, another team that I considered, and these two teams I widely considered to get into my poll. Army and Navy have both been super impressive so far this season. They both still have to play Notre Dame, but they are both undefeated. You are not ready for an Army-Navy conference championship game. You are not ready for Army-Navy having college football playoff implications. You're just simply not ready for it. I am. I want it so bad. You have no idea. I'm rooting for it so freaking hard. But this is my honorable mention list, and obviously you could put a ton more teams here on this list. Again, it's a big crapshoot as to who makes the list, who doesn't, and everything of that manner. So let's go ahead and keep diving on in here now, and let's get into my actual top 25 list, shall we? Nebraska is back in my top 25 list. Again, I don't necessarily feel great about Nebraska being in my top 25 because over the past couple weeks they have looked shaky. Dylan Raiola has not looked as good as he did over the first few games that Nebraska did play, but the Cornhuskers are still a team that sit 5-1. It's their best start in almost a decade here, I do believe. And Nebraska just went and beat a good Rutgers team. Granted, it was at home. We're going to learn a lot about Nebraska over their next few games. They got to go on the road and play Indiana. Indiana looks really good right now. They're on a bye this week, but obviously that Indiana game is coming up. They got Ohio State coming up here in 3 weeks. So we're going to learn a lot about Nebraska here as they take on 2 back-to-back road games against, as it currently stands, and in my poll as well, top 20 teams. So we'll see what the Huskers are made of there in the coming weeks. How about the Pittsburgh Panthers, huh? Pitt just keeps that train on rolling. They are here at number 24. Pitt is undefeated as it currently stands right now, and they still have put together some fairly impressive performances and some pretty solid wins. I mean, you take a look at what Pitt overall has done on the season. You went on the road and beat a North Carolina team that is going to end up, I think, being pretty solid this year. You have a win over West Virginia, who they are starting to rebound and play a lot better football. You go on the road in the comeback effort against Cincinnati. That's another team that might end up making a bowl game this season, at least if current trends continue. Cincinnati could definitely be a team we see playing postseason football. Pittsburgh has been a team that's been on my honorable mention list for quite some time now. It's finally about time they get into the top 25. They're here at number 24. I said last week I did not feel confident having Missouri in my top 10, but I didn't think that would happen against Texas A&M. My, oh my, Missouri. There are a lot of problems here with this Missouri team. I think they're really missing their defensive coordinator in Blake Baker. And among a lot of other things here for this Missouri team, again, Brady Cook to Luther Burden, and they're just not getting enough. Not necessarily Brady Cook to Luther Burden. What I'm trying to say, they're not really getting the production out of the wide receiver room as they want to, and Brady Cook had an awful game, only a 25.6 QBR, went 13 of 31, just not a good completion percentage, and again, the defense couldn't stop Jack, Diddley, or squat in that game against Texas A&M. Missouri, I heavily considered dropping them out of my poll, but I think Missouri is a good enough team to where they're going to show you that, there's a reason that Missouri was so good last year, and I think they are going to step up their play, but man, after a performance like that, they're going to drop a significant amount. They dropped 14 spots here to number 23. Number 22 is the SMU Mustangs, and again, there were some questions about this team in the early going. Preston Stone hadn't looked as good. You take a look at some of the other players there. It just didn't seem like SMU was really a team that you could look at and say, yeah, they're going to be in the ACC conversation. You kind of looked at them and said, hey, this is an SMU team that has really struggled so far, and they just haven't really been able to put everything together quite yet. Again, they struggled in that game against Nevada. They lose at home to BYU, and obviously we know how good of a team BYU is proving out to be this season. But ever since that TCU game, they've really figured it out here, right? Kevin Jennings has let this offense explode. Brashard Smith and LJ Johnson are starting to run really well as running backs, and now you go on the road and beat a top 25 team in the Louisville Cardinals. Yeah, you're absolutely going to be considered here and in the top 25. Again, their lone loss at home to BYU, it looked like a little bit of a shaky loss at the time. Now, it does not look like a bad loss at all. I think the Ponies are still going to be a really good force, and I think they are in the ACC conversation this season. They're here at number 22. Illinois is at number 21, and I, off the top of my head, do not believe that Illinois played this past weekend. No, they did not. They were on bye. But, the Illini will keep their spot here in the top 25. Again, they have an impressive road win against the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and their only loss on the season has been to the Penn State Nittany Lions, a team that a lot of people, as it currently stands right now, are probably going to have in their top 5 with all the chaos we saw this past week. So the Illini move up a couple spots there to number 21. Not much more to say about them there. A lot of more teams move up because a lot of teams above these teams fell. So we got the Oklahoma Sooners here at number 20. I still think Oklahoma is going to need to improve on a ton of things this season. And obviously we are going to learn a lot about Oklahoma this week when they play Texas. They were also on bye this past week, but again, Jackson Arnold got benched. You end up going with a different starter at the quarterback position. Yep. Find a way to win that game at Auburn a couple weeks ago, even though Michael Hawkins still not the most impressive of quarterback players, and they really struggled there to run the football. Well, they didn't struggle to run the football, just only 2 guys ran the football for them. Defensively, I think it's starting to come along. Oklahoma's got a ton of questions. Again, not a team I really feel great about having in my top 25 at this point, but for the Oklahoma Sooners, they've done enough to keep their spot in the top 25, in my opinion, so they're up here to number 20. Indiana is up to number 19, and I am so sorry, Hoosier fans. I did not think this team was going to be able to put it all together in year 1 in my season prediction. They're one of very few teams across the country that has already clinched their spot in a bowl game. They might even be the only team that has clinched their spot in a bowl game so far this season. Indiana is sitting right now at a perfect 6-0. And just looking, Miami's done it, and Indiana. I believe that's your list right there. I think Miami and Indiana are the only 2 teams that are currently at that 6-win threshold. Indiana's really put everything together, man. They have done an absolutely phenomenal job so far this season. Curtis Rourke is having a great season as the quarterback of this team. The running back room is running really well, averaging over 5 yards per carry. Surratt and Cooper and Price and Cross and all of these wide receivers that are stepping up and playing big minutes. Indiana's got a lot of interesting games coming up here on their schedule. Ohio State is still there. You got Nebraska coming to town in, I believe, next week. Got to go on the road to play Michigan State. Washington's still there. Michigan is still there. But for all intents and purposes, this is a very workable schedule for Indiana and a team that absolutely should be considered a dark horse to reach the college football playoff. Boise State, we know the conversation with them. They jumped 6 spots from last week. Ashton Genty's the best player in college football right now, and he, as of right now, is my leading candidate to go win the Heisman Trophy. Boise State looks impressive. They are the best team out of the group of 5 realm. And they're going to be up here 6 spots there to number 18, pulling off yet another huge win this past week against Utah State. Kansas State, we take a look at what the Wildcats have done recently. Just this past week, they were on bye, so didn't really get a whole lot from Kansas State, but we started to see Avery Johnson come along and play really well in that Week 5 game there against Oklahoma State. The defense, the secondary still may have some troubles, but they were able to pick off Alan Bowman a couple of times a couple weeks ago. Ollie Gordon got going a little bit, but again, the big news there, DJ Giddens running well, but Avery Johnson stepping up for this team, and Utah is here at number 16. I actually believe Utah stays where they were last week, so give me 1 second. Yeah, just went back and checked. Utah does stay where they are, or I said where they were this past week, and if I happen to get that wrong, then I apologize. That up to probably was right. But I believe I remember Utah at 16 this past week, and I mean, that's exactly where they're going to stay. I think that's where the AP poll has got them there as well. They got a road game against Arizona State coming up. And again, that loss to Arizona. After that loss that Arizona just had to Texas Tech, looking a little shaky. Arizona State surprised a little bit this year. Utah is the favorite to go on the road in Tempe and be able to pull out the win there on Friday. Going to be a very interesting contest, though. Again, I think Utah with a healthy Cam Rising is the best team in the Big 12 still, but there are a couple other teams that you got to watch out for in that conference. The teams that sit there at 15 and 14, respectively. BYU. Who thought the Cougars were going to be this good this season, huh? BYU has really, really impressed so far this season. They did end up coming off of a bye week. They do have Arizona coming in, and hey, I'd still watch out for the Wildcats. I know some confidence in that team might be diminished and whatnot because of the loss to Texas Tech there at home, but Arizona's still a team that's got a lot of good talent that can still push teams around. And I mean, if the Big 12 has shown us anything this year, I mean, if college football has shown us anything this year, it's anybody can beat anybody. Arizona's got a lot of dangerous weapons. You got to be careful. But I mean, BYU. We've seen a lot of really good things out of them this season, mainly Jake Retzlaff at the quarterback position. Maybe like to cut back on interceptions just a little bit. But it is this BYU defense that is stepping up, making a ton of plays, and that's why BYU is in a lot of people's top 15. Iowa State is right there at number 14. And look, Iowa State darn near the top 10 in the AP poll. This is a dangerous team. Matt Campbell has got a complete squad. It's an Iowa State team you got to watch out for right now. I think they're going to be a lot of people's favorites to go win the Big 12 Conference. He's gotten a lot of really good play out of guys like Rocco Becht and some of the guys in the running back room. But again, that defense is stepping up, playing really well as well. They have 8 interceptions, 3 fumbles recovered on the year, 9 sacks on the season. They're just being able to slow down whatever teams have thrown at them. Again, Iowa State, BYU, couple teams out of the Big 12 that sit here in my top 15. Let's talk about the LSU Tigers here for a second, shall we? LSU has got an absolutely massive matchup coming up with Ole Miss this weekend. Now, you go back, again, LSU was on bye this past week. They thrashed South Alabama just a couple of weeks ago. The news that Harold Perkins was going to be out definitely did hurt the LSU Tigers, but Garrett Nussmeier continues to sling the rock really, really well. Caden Durham, that true freshman running back, is absolutely outstanding. Kyron Lacey has stepped up really well. Aaron Anderson, Mason Taylor, you know they got a lot of good wide receivers there. LSU, a team that, again, can still push for a spot in the college football playoff. You are going to learn a lot about them this week when they play Ole Miss. I believe that is a home game, if I'm not mistaken, there as well. Double check myself on that. It is. It will be a home game for LSU. Underdogs at home, though. We'll see how the Tigers take it. A&M, I mean, my apologies, Aggies fans. I did not rank you guys this past week. It was really hard for me to come up with that 25th team this past week. Well, proving right there why it should have been Texas A&M, because they just absolutely beat the brakes off of the Missouri Tigers, and I don't think anybody expected that to happen here in this game. Let me just read you some stats. Again, you already heard what they held Brady Cook to, but Connor Wigman came back in this game. 18 of 22 for 276 yards. Le'Veon Moss, 138 yards, 3 touchdowns on 12 carries. Amari Daniels had 2 rushing touchdowns. This A&M team did it all on the ground. The ground and pound attack defeated the Missouri Tigers basically by itself. And now with Connor Wigman back again, I really liked what's his name? Why is it escaping my mind? I'm gonna remember it. Marcel Reed. I really like what Marcel Reed was able to do here with this team. But Connor Wigman is the better passer, and he still shows that he can run. He does give Texas A&M the better chance to win than Marcel Reed. And again, you'll love what Marcel Reed has done for this team. A&M has got a lot of tough games coming up here. They should beat Mississippi State this week. Mississippi State, not a very good football team. LSU, South Carolina, Texas. Those are some big games still on the schedule. Even a road game against Auburn could be a little bit dangerous. And I know the Auburn Tigers haven't put it together, but Jordan-Hare, a tough place to play. Notre Dame up a couple spots here to number 11, and the Irish are reminding us all that, hey, you cannot count them out. This is still a team that is going to hang around, that is going to be a team that you got to watch out for. Again, had a bye week this past week. They're coming off still that big win against the Louisville Cardinals. They get Stanford this upcoming week. Should be interesting to see how Notre Dame plays the rest of the way forward. But again, they had a bye this past week. You move on into the top 10. Again, there are still some teams that I don't necessarily feel great about having them in my top 10. Ole Miss is not necessarily one of them, but a team that gets into the top 10. Maybe you could put Notre Dame in here, but Ole Miss is going to be coming off an absolutely massive bounce back win, right? They go on the road against South Carolina, and exactly what I sort of previewed in that game preview video had happened. The Ole Miss pressure was just way too much. Try 6 sacks and 10 tackles for loss. They're the best team in the country at being able to get into the backfield, not only against quarterbacks, but just being able to provide negative plays. And that is something that is really valuable and is going to be valuable against LSU, because if LSU can't stop it, well, they're going to have a repeat of what South Carolina did there. The South Carolina was able to utilize their pass rush and their ability to get into the backfield to really wreak havoc on LSU's offense, and it almost helped them win that game. Ole Miss is going to do the exact same thing, man. That's an absolutely massive key to watch, and we'll preview that matchup more there in a video coming up. I believe tomorrow is when I will get that video out. But Ole Miss, a very nice bounce-back performance. Jackson Dart, I think, could still play a little bit better. We've seen some better things from him, but overall still a solid outing from him. Henry Parrish continues to run well. Ole Miss is back in my top 10 there at number 10. Clemson is up to number 9. Yes, the Clemson Tigers. You look at that first game against Georgia and you say, oh man, is Clemson going to be the Clemson dynasty is officially over. The offense is still not great. No, they've picked it up. Cade Klubnik has actually looked pretty darn good this season. Phil Maffa has been running really well, and this Clemson defense is one of the best defenses in the entire country. Clemson is one of the top, if not the top, ACC contender. You could definitely make an argument on why you should put Clemson above Miami. And again, their only loss, a team that you haven't seen Georgia yet. That means they're in my top 5. Again, they're only lost to a top 5 team. Clemson's done a lot of good things this year. And again, watch out for them. It seems like them and Miami are on a collision course in the ACC championship game. They don't play in the regular season. Clemson's got Wake Forest coming up this week, a game they should win. Tennessee and Alabama. What happened? I mean, first of all, Tennessee losing to Arkansas on the road. Maybe some people saw that one coming, maybe not. Having Taylon Green go out and then the backup quarterback Singleton go ahead and go win you that game there for the Arkansas Razorbacks. And the big reason why they are on the honorable mention list is they're a really sneaky team. So Tennessee going on the road. I mean, look, Nico Iamaleava is going to learn from that. He's going to get better. I don't really have any major concerns about Tennessee because, again, this is the SEC. Going on the road and pulling out a win is really hard. But Tennessee, they've got some really important games coming up here really fast, man. Bama is still on the schedule. Georgia is still on the schedule. You got Florida coming up this week, even though it's at home. Don't discount the Gators. Kentucky has to go there to you. And even now on the road against Vanderbilt at the end of the season looks like a dangerous game because of what Diego Pavia and the Commodores were able to do against the team that sits at number 7 in the Alabama Crimson Tide. Look, for all the chaos that happened this past week, Washington beating Michigan, that was believable, right? Arkansas beating Tennessee, that was believable. I even think Minnesota beating USC, that one was believable. And Texas A&M beating Missouri, I literally predicted that to happen, right? I predicted Texas A&M to beat Missouri, maybe not as badly as they did, but I still predicted the Aggies to win. That's unbelievable. That's unpredictable, and that's exactly why you love college football. Vandy beating Alabama, what a lot of people look at and laugh at and say, hey, that's the worst team in the SEC. How do you lose to Vanderbilt? It just shows that Alabama's defense is a real problem. It is a problem. It struggled against South Florida. It still kind of had its struggles against Wisconsin. You could say, like, wow, that defense has got to get better after they allowed Georgia to get back in that game. Now, and when it allows 40 points to Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt controls the clock for 42 minutes, not a fluky win at all. Diego Pavia would not let that team lose. Vanderbilt played really well. But it just shows that Bama's got a ton of problems specifically on the defensive end. Jalen Milroe, Ryan Williams in that offense can put up points with anybody. But if they can't defend and keep the other team from putting up points, especially when that team, and again, no disrespect to Vanderbilt, but there are a lot of teams in the country with much better offenses than what Vanderbilt has, specifically teams that Alabama's going to face, like Tennessee, like the LSU Tigers, and like maybe a team they play in the SEC championship game if they get that far. Possibly it's Georgia again, possibly it's Tennessee again, maybe it's Ole Miss. Who knows? Bama's defense has got to get fixed. That's the big issue for the Crimson Tide, and they have dropped 6 spots from their number 1 ranking this past week all the way to number 7. Again, too much chaos to really drop them a whole lot lower, and they still have the win over Georgia on the resume, and Tennessee's got some other pretty solid wins, including a win over a top 25 team and Oklahoma there as well as they've just looked really impressive so far this season, which is why they haven't fallen out of the top 10. Miami, how about the Hurricanes, man? 2 back-to-back nail-biting games in game that you could argue Virginia Tech should have won. You can argue Cal should have won. Miami and Cam Ward is not going to let this team lose. Miami, again, besides the Indiana Hoosiers, the only other team to, as of right now, clinch bowl eligibility. And for the Miami Hurricanes, again, I don't necessarily feel great about them being in my top 10 because they have looked really shaky, and that defense has not looked great, maybe besides that pass rush that's been able to get into the backfield, and you may even want it to come to life a little bit more. Miami still, though, a dangerous team. They have earned their spot in the top 10. They do have, again, some really nice wins and a lot to pad on that resume. Again, going on the road beating Cal, not an easy thing to do, guys. Cal, I was telling people, is a very sneaky team, but Miami's got to go on the road to play Louisville here in a couple of weeks. Even that road game against Georgia Tech could seem dangerous, and even Syracuse there on the road as well. But they got to win on the road against Florida. You have a win over 2 solid ACC teams of Virginia Tech and Cal. South Florida on the road is a pretty solid out-of-conference win in the Group of 5 realm as well. Miami's still going to be a team to watch out for, still going to be a team that's dangerous, but man, having them in my top 10, especially at number 6, I'd just be wary of Miami, because if they don't fix some of the issues that we've seen, well, Miami could be losing the game here somewhere down the line. The Big Ten now overrides the SEC in the top 5, and my top 5 looks like this. I think, with no debate, Texas and Ohio State are the top 2 teams in the country. And I think that you could say, as of right now, the only 2 teams that, at least me personally, I even said this in my weekly takeaway video just a couple of days ago, Texas and Ohio State are the only 2 teams that I would trust full-heartedly and with full force right now to go make the college football playoff. That is just simply how I feel. Again, Georgia lacks necessary downfield threats. We've seen Penn State struggle. Oregon has still got some offensive line issues to figure out. And even though both those teams are playing well, again, I don't necessarily trust Bama right now, because that defense could lose them a game against Tennessee and LSU, and then you're sitting there with 3 losses, probably on the bubble, waiting to see if you're going to get in. Tennessee, I don't necessarily trust them fully. The offense has not looked that great, at least as good as it has over the past couple of games that they have played. And just some of the other teams across the nation, it's a crapshoot. Texas and Ohio State have looked like the best 2 teams. Texas obviously earns that number 1 spot because they have a road win over Michigan and, again, some other SEC games under their belt. If Ohio State beats Oregon this upcoming week, they will vault Texas to the number one. Even though Texas is going to get a ranked win against Oklahoma, the Sooners definitely not as impressive of a team as what Oregon is, and I think Ohio State's resume would probably pass Texas at that point. But let's talk about the Oregon Ducks for just 1 minute. They are getting everything together. They are starting to, right? They're starting to really get everything together. The offensive line play has gotten a whole ton better, and a huge, absolutely huge matchup with Ohio State coming up this week. Now, again, Michigan State did not garner a sack. They still did get 4 tackles for loss. Dylan Gabriel played fairly solidly, but here's the thing about Oregon that they got to clean up. I can guarantee you there are things about Oregon and Ohio State that we have not seen that they've been saving for this matchup to pull out against each other. But for Oregon and for Oregon specifically offensively, you can't turn the football over in the red zone. Yeah, they beat Michigan State 31-10. They controlled that game, sure. They should have beat them 50-10. 2 turnovers in the red zone. Turn the ball over in the red zone twice against this Buckeye defense and Will Howard and all the weapons that they have offensively. They're going to go down the field and score. Turn the football over twice in the red zone against Ohio State on Saturday and let me know how that pans out for you. That's something that absolutely has to get fixed. Ohio State's looked like one of the best teams in the country. Oregon can't beat them. They have the necessary pieces. It's going to be a massive game of chess coming up this weekend, and I can't wait to watch it. Penn State is sitting here at number 4 as well. I don't really have much to say about Penn State. They've been a pretty solid team so far. They've been undefeated. They got some good quality wins under their belt, including a win over, again, West Virginia on the road, and West Virginia is starting to pick things up right now. They have a win against Illinois. That's a top 25 team, and Penn State's going to get a chance to pad their resume with some other games they have coming up here on the schedule. But the thing that people might argue with me about is why Georgia is at number 3. I'm not doubting Georgia. Period. End of story. It is one of the biggest mistakes that you can make this season. Even after that Alabama game, I came on and said, look, Georgia was able to fight back in the way that they showed grit and toughness and the way to persevere through that game and make that one an effort and even hold a lead in the late stages there of that game. Does Georgia have some problems? Yeah, they don't have a downfield pass threat, and you just had Colby Young go get arrested, which, again, is a string of Georgia players that have been put in handcuffs lately and over the course of the past couple of seasons. But Georgia overall as a football team, I don't doubt them. This is still one of the best teams in the entire country. And for right now, again, your only loss on the road against the Alabama Crimson Tide and at least a top 10 environment in college football, I think that still warrants Georgia being in the top 5 and warrants them being at number 3. I know Alabama does not have I know Alabama just is coming off in what a lot of people are going to consider a bad loss, and it is. It's a pretty bad loss, but Georgia is still one of the best teams. So I have them here at number 3. I think these are the 5 teams you got to have in your top 5, with Ohio State and Texas, not necessarily in that order, whatever order you want. Those are the clear top 2 teams in the country right now. And we're going to learn a lot about Ohio State. We're going to learn a lot about Oregon. And we're going to learn a lot about Texas this week. Texas has the Red River, and of course, Ohio State, Oregon will play in what the AP poll has a top 3 matchup, what I simply have as a top 5 matchup. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please let me know your thoughts on my top 25, or give me your own top 25 down in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys tomorrow when we start previewing a loaded Week 7 slate. First game up will be the big one in Eugene. Bucks and Ducks coming at you tomorrow. Goodbye.